get into a lab and the professor says everyone gets a chance in the lab. That's really special because most schools in this world, if you're an undergrad student, you want to do research, some schools will not give it to you at all.
I see.
Some schools will only offer it to you if you have a 3.8 GPA.
That's true.
Right?
Because the resources are limited.
Yeah, the professor wants to work with everyone.
Yes.
But when you've got a queue of talented students going out the door, who do you help? So for us, take for example Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. Been there a couple of times now. The other day I was walking down the corridor. Every professor at Drew in the science building, and this includes things like economics, statistics, applied math, as well as normal sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, whatever. Every professor has a poster outside their office showing what research they're currently working on. It's all on campus. Some of it's funded by companies.
Yes.
And I just walked into a professor's office there the other day.
各位老师、同学，还有在线的家长们，大家午安！非常欢迎大家来参加我们今天久违的 ISC Uni Talk Show。我们今天非常开心，邀请到 Into 美国东亚的 Assistant Director Benjamin 来到我们的现场。Hello Benjamin。
Hello， 大家好。
那 Benjamin 他在留学这块区域其实已经有10几年的经验了，尤其是他之前在 US News Global Education， 我相信有很多喜欢去美国大学念书的学生或家长。加减减都有接触过 US News 这个排名的机构，那Benjamin 也在那边工作很多年，所以他有非常多关于这些海外大学的资讯跟观察可以跟我们分享。那今天我们的主题是关于 AI 跟我们未来的职涯发展威胁上要怎么来作为平衡，作为我们选校跟选系的重点。所以今天很高兴欢迎，因为其实但在这边也研究很久，然后他今天有很多新的观点要来跟我们分享。So we are going to talk about the AI won't take your job, but your skills might not be enough today. So thank you for your coming. I'm under very tight schedule. It's our honor.
Thank you for having me.
So I think I just cut through the point that a lot of students worry about their future, their job opportunities or their future opportunities might be taken place by artificial intelligence. So for our audience, because they all plan, they believe they might have a better chances if they have experience of study abroad. So how AI transforming job markets across different industries, and what does this mean for student planning study abroad? Can study abroad give them any, edge in the AI driven job market?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here in Taiwan, I think most students they ask this question to me, which is, what's the major I can study that will guarantee me career success?
Indeed.
就是王牌专业这种概念嘛。Truth be told, there isn't one. It's going to be very clear on that.
The future-proof
The future-proof major, yeah. So, interesting stat. 10 years ago, the most sought-after degree in Asia was accounting. Yeah. Nowadays, how often do you see accounting students? You see them, but rare. Very rare.
I am myself major accounting.
And accounting still has a big future, right? The accounting jobs in the US are forecast to grow by 6% between now and 2030 because America's economy keeps getting bigger, right? So it's not to say it's a dead major. It's to say that the nature of the major is changing. This question, which industries will be impacted by AI, is a very simple answer. Every single industry in the world is going to be impacted either adversely or in a positive manner by the development of artificial intelligence. Here in Taiwan, most students I meet, right, you ask them, who wants to do computer science? 大部分就会举手嘛，就说对，我就是学计算机。
Or business analytics.
Or business analytics, 对，这两个专业为主嘛。Ultimately, though, I think that so we can focus more on these majors. We'll talk about arts, humanities in a little bit later. But if we're thinking about business now, pretty much every single function of businesses is automatable to a degree of maybe 20%. Yeah. Globally, probably about 30 to 40% of job content is already replaceable by AI, already. But it won't be replaced that fast because humans are very slow to adapt. Yeah. So just like when personal computers were invented, it took 10 years to actually put them in offices. If you go to Japan now, just love Japan, by the way, for anyone who's online, but a lot of businesses still use fax machines. People and nations and cultures adapt at different rates in terms of technology, right? AI is different because number one, it is limitless, right? And number two, it develops much faster than any other technology has. So students should enjoy this. Students should embrace this, approach it with confidence, with some caution, because even the most employable person in the world is worried about AI. Every single one. I promise you, they are. But going back to business, something like accounting, we have software like QuickBooks, right? Something like supply chain management, we have SAP, Ariba, we have all these various softwares that can work on it. So the reality, I think, of the future of the world is, number one, we're going to be very data driven, right? Even if you go to all of the night markets in Taipei, these guys are going to have business analytics platforms on their phones, right? Even the most sort of seemingly simple business tasks will have some degree of automation. The good news is that it doesn't mean your job will be replaced, but it is very likely your job will be complemented. So there's a graph, which I will share with you, a very, very fun graph by Goldman Sachs, and it shows the jobs which have the chance of being complemented by AI, and that means between 10 and 50% would be complemented. All of these white-collar jobs, the areas like sales, marketing, business management, architecture, engineering, all of them are almost entirely complementary. There's only one profession where maybe 25% of the job could be entirely done by AI, and that would be the legal profession, so lawyers. But can we fully replace lawyers and legal professionals with machines? No way. Absolutely not. But it fundamentally changes the way lawyers work.
Yes.
And the lawyers I now know, they are spending far less time doing tricky analytical line by line. There is software, there are platforms, that can help them to do that, right? And so it actually frees up their time to do things like representing more clients, right? So they become more effective and more efficient. So the number one lesson from today is your major matters more now than it ever has in the past. And I mean by that, 10 years ago, you could go to school, you could get a degree in business management, business administration, psychology, whatever you wanted, and the fact that you had a degree would make you competitive, right? Nowadays, everyone's going to have a degree. 50% of Gen Z, 1 billion people, all holding the piece of paper, I'm special, I'm special, right? And so the actual subject that students choose matters. And to take that one step further, before we move on to the next one, because I'm probably answering 2 or 3 questions at once, is choose a subject that infuses technology and STEM. And that doesn't mean you're limited to computer science and engineering, right? Yeah, that's a long answer, but an important distinction to that question.
So would you consider that the student can get this more diverse resource when they choose study abroad than they study comfortably on their mother tongue? Yeah,
I think there's only one country in the world right now that is integrating STEM into programs in a meaningful way, and that's the USA, right? The USA is quick to adapt. Most of this software comes from America, right? Most of these systems come from America. So the professors who work at the schools in the US, they usually have experience in that software, right? They've usually worked in that area before, and therefore it's easy for them to incorporate it into their classes. Yeah, there are fewer career academics in the US. It's much more practical and hands-on. And so I do think that any student who wants to get a step up right now in their education should strongly think about the United States. Okay, and if anybody here is thinking, USA, 好远啊，好贵啊，首先呢，没你想象的贵。If I could get a tattoo, it would say America is not as expensive as you think. There's so many good scholarship opportunities right now in the United States. And again, people think, oh, if you look at the cost of eggs in New York or something, the truth is there's ways that you can live without having to spend huge amounts of money in the United States. And a lot of the universities we work with provide great scholarships, great support in finding good quality housing. And students are able to have a very high value. What we really want is for students to have ROI. Yeah. So the return on investment for your major needs to be very good. You would be very surprised at the discounts that we offer. Yes, as we discussed earlier, that beside the first certificate, actually a lot of US universities are able to provide you the opportunities for your second paper before you get your workforce. So that leads to my next question. So how the university
design the curriculum to help students develop AI resistance or AI compository skills that cultivate their students more competitive in the workforce?
Yeah. So what you'll see now when you look at a list of American degree programs, especially postgraduate programs, a lot of them are now STEM classified.
Yes.
So if we start with business, MBAs, they should all be STEM at this point. They should all have strong data analytics and data practicums built in. So that's what you have to look for. When you look at a university now, we can't just look, you know, when you go to the education fair and every university has a banner and every banner is full of these rankings, so good
numbers.
And they'll always say this sort of, we are the #1 university for sports and #1 for business in the tri-state area. They all have them. They all have these amazing accolades. We have to go way deeper, way deeper than that now, and understand really what the course and the curriculum structure is. So you need to go onto the course website, you need to break it down, and students need to ask universities these questions, right? How much technology is integrated in your curriculum? Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples. Oregon State University. Okay,
that's a very popular one recently in Taiwan.
A certain one gentleman graduated from there who's very famous from NVIDIA. Yeah, we know, and it is popular, and it's a brilliant school because its technology research faculty is great. But what many people don't know about OSU is their arts and their humanities are very interdisciplinary. So when it comes to, say, even their kind of dancing and performing arts, so OSU is very strong in robotics. Their performing arts actually incorporate robots into the dance now. So there are people programming robots to do dancing and dancers dancing with them. So very interdisciplinary and very cool. I'll give you another example. Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. A student taking music and computer science at the same time. You're probably thinking, well, what do they have to do with each other? Well, actually, this student went and did a project in a national park in the US.
Wow.
And putting microphones in the ground was able to track the sounds and identify the sounds of various animals, and then using the skills in computer science, virtually turn them into a kind of GPS program she's looking at. And so she was able to work out the migration trends of animals, including endangered animals, and her music ability allowed her to understand the pitch, the tone. She had the ear to be able to understand it, but then her computer science ability allowed her to actually create program and software to demonstrate her research. And so this is the example of interdisciplinary studies. One more, because this is for business, I think it's important. St. Louis University in Missouri, a top 100 school. They've got a business school with many majors ranked in the top 20. So that's another recommendation we always give to graduate students. Look at the majors ranking, right? Don't just look at the overall ranking. Their supply chain management class. It incorporates SAP software, the ones I was just mentioning. So the kinds of software that students use in the classroom in that supply chain class are this exact same software they'll be using when they go into their jobs. So change the angle here. If I'm an employer and I'm looking at a graduate, I'm taking a risk. Because let's be honest, employers don't like hiring fresh grads.
Indeed.
It's their least favorite type of recruitment. However, it's also their biggest opportunity, because if they hire the right people, they can grow with the business, they can innovate, they can improve the future of the company. If you've already got most of those things checked off, right, then it means that you're less of a risk. And so you're more likely to get looked at. So those are some examples of technology. I hope that's enough. It should be enough. Interdisciplinary technology coming into this classroom and technology playing a very, very vital role. The discipline hasn't changed. The understanding of end-to-end supply chains, so procurement, logistics, storage, sale, all of that is still the same, but what's sitting in the center, the core, is the software. And so the practical nature of that is also another piece which we can talk about today as well, because that's like the next part of the puzzle.
Yes. So before we have the chance to get admitted into these amazing and very resourceful universities, I think during the application time, the first challenge we faced AI is that AI is very accessible, and a lot of students will come to us that, can I use AI to work for my portfolio? So is there any suggestion for them that students responsible for use AI and in their learning assessment avoid plagiarism or academic misconduct, or how university help them to accept the tool is very accessible right now and they have a different way to assess students?
Yeah, every school is different.
Yes.
Every school is very different. So there are some universities, like for example, UPenn, Wharton School of Business, they, during the classes and during homework assignments, they encourage students to use AI. But that's not every assignment. It's only for some where the university specifically stipulates we want you to use AI for this. They did a really interesting experiment where they found that when they took two control groups of students, one who were told to use AI and one who were not, the average grade of the class increased for the students who were allowed to use AI. What it showed also was that the students who were already very strong, AI didn't actually improve their work output very much. But for the students who are a little weaker, and this is Wharton at Penn, so we're not talking super weak here, but for those students who are a little on the weaker side, it really brought up their scores. Okay, so in the right environment, when the university allows it, for applications, you've got to look at the university website.
That's very
because
important.
if they say no, don't risk it. because they can detect it. They can detect it.
They can use all the AI tools to detect it, right?
There's software like GPT-0, which was actually made by a student in an Ivy League school.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very, very impressive. But the software to detect this is growing all the time, and there will be ways around it. But better to not if they don't allow it.
Okay, so come back to the university resources. How do these universities help international students get the practical experience, such as internship, work placement, at the time they study, to enhance their employability?
It's a great question. So we covered point one, right?
Yes.
If we're doing our recipe for success today, point one is make sure you do a technology-infused degree program, interdisciplinary, involving STEM, preferably data analytics if you can. Point number two and number three are of equal importance to point number one. So point number two is you must cultivate great soft skills, great communication skills. And number three is three words: experience, experience, and experience, right? So we think about 1 billion graduates from Gen Z, right? It's a lot of people with the university degree. We then need the CV, the resume. So when we graduate, our goal is no longer, oh, I have this lovely piece of paper from a university, right? You need to also have the lovely resume as well. And so experiences, they come in so many forms. We have a name for this now. We just call it experiential learning, right? and it's a very American name. It's sort of making a simple complex complicated. But all experiential learning means is that we exercise the practical application of our course as well as the theoretical application of it, okay? And so for a student doing sciences, that means getting you into laboratories. For a student doing business, outside the classroom, in a company, solving a real business problem. And we do that through areas like capstones, practicum courses, of course internships, that's a big part of it. And there's also something called a co-op program. Some students can enroll in co-op programs if they have a certain grade at various schools. So there are lots of options. What we want really, I would say, for a grad student in the US, you want to have at least 2 real-world experiences on that resume during your graduate degree program, right? And that can come in many ways. So I'll take it back to St. Louis, supply chain management program. Last year, 100% of international students on that program, 100% undertook internships, right? So that's remarkable. We're talking dozens of students.
That's very high.
Yes, you can't get better, right? It's the best rate there is. And one of the reasons for this is because they're at a great school doing a highly ranked major, but the location is perfect. It's a supply chain and logistics centralized hub. Right? So you've got all these amazing opportunities there that you can get into. Now, on top of that, their professor took them around the world to do supply chain analysis. So these schools, these top 100, these very strong schools, their professors have got brilliant experience, but more so contacts, brilliant contacts. Okay, so this professor knew people at H&M, you know, the clothing store, and they did a cross-border supply chain analysis. So first in St. Louis, and then afterwards in Madrid. So they were looking at the differences between supply chain analysis in different continents, right? But they didn't stop there, because really when it comes to supply chain and logistics and procurement, there's two main types of products. It's perishable and non-perishable, right? So non-perishable is, you know, anything you can't eat, right?
Yes.
And so perishable is stuff you can eat. So they went to the biggest fish market in Europe, which is in Portugal, and they did, again, the fish market, the operator of the market, took their real data, shared it with St. Louis students, and then they did an analysis there. Then they went over to Boston, Massachusetts, and they did the same thing in the biggest fish market in Massachusetts. And so, again, these all go on your resume. So you've got students who have, all of them got an internship, all of them did a perishable and a non-perishable cross-continental supply chain analysis, and they have SAP Ariba, right? So they're using the SAP software systems that all the companies that they're futurely looking at for jobs at will use it, right? So they've got all of these rich, beautiful skills, experiences, the STEM, and get this, the last piece of the puzzle, this is everything, by the way. 就是家长最不喜欢听的就是这个 soft skills 这个开玩笑啊but really like because 你听到这个词嘛 soft 你就以为是 like very weak not an important part of it but because machines are now taking more and more of the nerdy stuff right so we need to develop better soft skills and so St. Louis is a private school with a faculty ratio of 8:1 8:1 is tiny, right? It's like Cornell or Duke. You can look this up on the US News website. There's lots of info on it there. 8:1 is amazing. So the environment on the campus is 14,000 students. It would be great. It would be lively, buzzing, clubs, societies, you name it. But in the classroom, we're having discussions. We're able to exercise those soft skills. Students know how to present. Students know how to debate. They know how to challenge respectfully. They know how to recognize opportunity and chance. They have emotional intelligence, right? They have, I don't know, a sense of humor, you know, things that matter in your career, right? So those three things have to be done together. That supply chain analysis is supply chain management course. It's a wonderful example of how if you find that right school, it ticks every single box that you need, right? Even the ranking box, which is not always essential, but it's nice to have if you can, right? So, like I say, you come out of that school, you'd have a lot to offer. Now, some schools offer longer term, like co-op programs, right? That's a full-time paid job. So you stop your study, and then you do co-op between 3 and 8 months. At one of our partner schools, Hofstra, in Long Island, in New York. I mean, it's so close to New York. You can practically see the skyscrapers from the campus. You're on this gorgeous green campus. Oh, it's absolutely stunning. And they offer students all the way up to the interview stage to go for full-time placements in New York City. Right? And there's just nothing like the salaries, the amazing opportunities available in New York. And everyone says, oh, really? Well, here's a number for you. $63,000. That's the full-time annual salary of an intern in New York City.
Oh my God.
$63,000, right? Yeah. And so it really is amazing, you know, the earnings potential there. But a student who comes into Hofstra, computer science, cybersecurity, data science. Cybersecurity, by the way, is where by 2030 there will be 3.5 million unfilled jobs. Right? So when students are like, oh, 我要读一个计算机科学，听说薪水很高.
Actually,
but they should actually go for cybersecurity. They really should. Microsoft hiring 5,000 new cybersecurity professionals this year. JP Morgan, just in the US, 1,000 cybersecurity professionals. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, a long answer again.
So it's very clear and very helpful information for the students.
Good. Yeah, I hope this demonstrates these important areas the students need to focus on.
Because I think that leads to my next question that you already mentioned about a lot of parents or students, they want some, future-proof major, and they feel puzzled when they choose their destinations, their universities, their major, especially in Taiwan curriculum that we basically just roughly separate them in biomath category or humanities category or engineer category. So to think about the major in the future, they have a lot of puzzled. Then they will come to seems to very reliable charts, ranking all kinds of ranking institutions, and think that, so should I choose those higher ranked universities? Does that mean that I will be highly recognized after I graduate? That will probably fulfill the first paper you just mentioned earlier.
Yes.
But you mentioned about a lot of other things. Actually prepare for your second paper, is your resume. So what's your advice to them when they choose this university? As you said that they have an internship as a Hofstra, give a very full training of interview opportunities that probably a lot of Ivy League university wouldn't provide. How about other advice you can share with them?
I feel like recently I've been looking at a lot of curriculums. It's very nerdy, right? 我发现了一个点哈，就是排名越靠前的大学，他们课程的设计就是越学术化的，而不是那种很 practical. This is true across the board. If you look at Texas Austin, which has one of the best electrical engineering disciplines in the United States, if not the whole world, they don't really put many of these practical elements within the classroom design. There is some laboratory work, right? But when it comes to things like capstones or internships, much harder to find at these schools which have the really high ranks. So for an international student, how much does a ranking matter? Well, I'm not going to pretend it's not important, right? But I've got to give you guys some bad news. that is that the ranking just doesn't matter nearly as much as most people think. Now, recently, there was a very interesting poll by Gallup. Right? We all know Gallup. They're the ones who make the polls, right? 开始通过采访3000个在美国关注的，就是比较关键的雇主，就涵盖这些所谓的 Amazon 啊、Apple, the ones who find a lot of international students, and they listed the kind of top 5 things they wanted. 大学排名就排在最后一位。应该只有2%的雇主显示了他们对大学排名非常关注、非常重视。Only 2%。而且这个2%呢，他们具体是看什么呢？你觉得他们是看什么 QS Top 100？就不太可能。他们看的都是 Harvard、Stanford、Penn。In the US, if you went to an Ivy school, 它确实是可以给你创造出一个窗口。
They find Ivy League.
Yes, because it's Ivy League, right? But you know how hard the Ivy League is to get into, right? I mean, 30% of applicants to Harvard last year had a full SAT score. Full. And there's still, many of them are rejected. Over 15,000 of those full SAT students were probably rejected. So what does top 30, top 50, 100 mean? In Asia, it means something, yeah? Like I think in Asia, especially amongst social fabric in society. From Thailand to Taiwan to Japan, rankings matter. The numerical thing matters. But really, you've got to look at the outcome. And there was a guy on TikTok recently, a Taiwanese student, his name's Oliver Wu, and he's going to Michigan Ann Arbor, which is a top 20 school, and studying computer science, which at this school is ranked number 10 in the US. So in Chinese it's called 高枕无忧, right? It's like you have everything. But when it came to going for jobs, he applies for 456 internship positions. He gets 1 offer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's the right reaction. Because I ask a lot of people, when I'm in China and I ask this question, I'm like, 你觉得这个比例怎么样呢？大部分的学生都会说还可以啊，挺好的。Because some parts of the world are extremely competitive. But here's the thing. It's a terrible ratio. You should never accept 456 applications to one job. But here's the reality of this student. What is he doing? His job application is this. He's behaving in a very robotic way. It's very nerdy, okay? And I tell you, the future, we're going to have so many robots doing nerdy things.
Yes.
We now need more human beings, right? So a very important piece of advice, not that I am the sort of the genie of careers, but an important piece of advice I can give to any student watching now is your success in your career is not how many resumes you send. Because actually, sending a resume is extremely easy. What matters is who's looking at it. It's not about how many resumes you send. It's actually about how many faces you see. And this brings us on to a very important question: networking.
Yes.
这是排名永远测不到的一方面。
很难。
This factor doesn't exist in any ranking. International Student Network ranking. No, impossible, right? Career Center International Student Support ranking. 就太长了. You know, there's absolutely no way that any ranking ever, even a ranking that has employment outcomes, could really accurately give your chance of getting a job, right? 而且排名是完全不可抗力的，对吧
？Yes。
我之前在 US News 的时候，曾经问了这个，就是 the editing committee，他们就是在做这个排名背后算法的决定。每一次改变的话，都会在排行榜里面呢产生非常大的一个颠簸。
对。
啊，就特别多大学就会 go up or down, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it can be extreme.
Yes.
and I asked them, like, you know, how often do you change it? They said every 3 years, something like that. And it made me think, you know, I know loads of students who got into school, they got into a top 30. Let's say 用那个韦克森林大学为例吧，本来是前30， 23年这个排行榜出炉之后就降了很多嘛，然后后面就变成了一个前50。Now if you're that student who's worked 3 years to get into a top 30 school and then within a second it's gone，那我们在亚洲比较喜欢保证，对吧？Can you guarantee I will get into this school? Can you guarantee this major is good? Can you guarantee I will get a job? 但是我发现一个大的矛盾，太多家庭、太多学生还是愿意把他们自己的未来、自己的期望，甚至可以说自己的命运，交给一个 no control 的因素，那就是排行榜啊。So what can you control? We go back to it, right?
Yes.
Your STEM-infused measure, your soft skills,
yes.
and of course experience, and experience.
Yes.
Those 3 things. You have to trust me on this one, fellas. This is a very, very important and radical mix. But it's the mix that has produced hundreds and thousands of highly successful students from Taiwan. And our alumni who are Taiwanese, when we meet them, the stories they tell us, not just here in Taiwan, but in Vietnam, in Japan.
Yes.
I was in Japan recently, met a guy who did one of our programs. He now works at Bloomberg. He got his job through connections he made whilst at university, on the university program. That was at Drew University. He was studying finance, and they take them to Wall Street for a semester, the Wall Street semester. And every day they take you into these offices and you can see what's happening. You can hear not just from alumni, but also very senior people. So the executive director for investment banking at JP Morgan. There's only 2 people in the world with that title, 2 people. And the students, maybe a group of 10, 12 students, get to spend 2 or 3 hours with this person. And the conversation is mind-blowing. To hear from somebody like that who earns anywhere between $1 and $3 million a year, who's telling you all about the finance industry, how it works. You know, finance people are pretty abrupt, quite direct, right? So they have a certain style of talking, but it really helps you understand the culture of the industry, right? So that's the opportunity that awaits a student in the US is we don't just give you experience, but we give you something way more valuable. The ability to know what you want and what you don't want. Yeah, because that's the biggest thing.
Yes. sometimes it's probably easier to know what you don't want at 18 years old.
Yes.
But at least you can eliminate the things you don't want to touch, give you more possibilities to reach different fields.
Yes. 所以说了这么多，其实遇到了一个词是最烦的词，叫 creativity. Right?
Yes.
This is what employers said they wanted. 就这个创造力。
Yes.
And I always ask students, if I invite you to Ben Nicholson's creativity class next week, and I will, for 1 hour, I will teach you how to be a more creative person. Would you pay me for that class? Most students in Taiwan are smart enough to go, no, I would not. And that's so important because creativity is something that you need a great classroom environment with a great professor and real practical application. Creativity, you can break it down. There's 3 things. One is being experimental. It's exactly what you just said. The younger you are, the more experimental you can be.
Yes.
真的有时候最近年轻人在这方面明白的，就是我跟大家说很简单嘛。Experimental 就是 say yes more than you say no, right? So you know when you've got kids and a house and a mortgage, then you can say no when you've got responsibilities. When you're young, you're not attached to anything. Get out there. Wow, this world is beautiful.
Yes.
There is so much. Yes. And students, we all think we know everything, but we don't. We know a fraction, a mere fraction of the knowledge that exists. So students have to say yes more than no. Number 2, they need to be very determined, right? And that means they need to believe in something bigger, right? You ask someone, why do you want to do business? These silly responses, right? So when students come and ask questions to universities, and this really, I'm just teasing, guys, don't take it personally, but this really matters. What matters is that you ask universities the right questions. Yeah. So when I'm sitting at a desk and someone comes up to my university and they'll be like, the questions, 老师，你这个 QS 排名今年多少? Don't ask that question. That's a boring question.
You can check online.
You can check that online, exactly. Why'd you come all the way here? You ask the details. What's your curriculum, breakdown and everything like that. I'm just teasing, like I say, not to take that personally, because for students, I understand you need to have an indicator. The rankings for many students matter. I'm not in any way demeaning the question, and I think it's good to come to a fair and ask any questions, right? But I do also think that people need to put more thought into what they're asking. Yeah. So, jokes aside, this is a serious game, and we want to do serious things. And so, when I'm here in Taiwan in the future, if any of your students want to chat about this, then we can really have great positive momentum from our conversations.
Yes, especially you mentioned although it's just a joke, but a lot of families, they will provide their kids, and the children themselves probably thinking, yes, it's my duty to inherit our family business. So maybe I just studied business management. But even so, in the business management area, as you said earlier, involve more technology or AI development in the future. It is very important you choose a destination, give you more interdisciplinary resources for you to grow up your own business in the future, in the next decade. I think that is very important.
Well, 70%. The IBM Skills Gap report recently said that 70% of employers looking for business graduates, they need to be data analytic ready, they need to be AI ready, and they need to have other technical software skills. So even if you are inheriting a family business, that's not easy. There's still a lot of challenges with that, and you've got to be prepared for that highly data-driven world if you want your family business to remain competitive, right? So for that, some great options for students. Yeah, really good options.
So my next question is the one that we discussed earlier, but we say we're going to talk about later, because it seems now student major in STEM or business-related, it would be preferable that business analytics or fintech tech kind of major is more favored in the job market. How can students majoring arts and humanities, although you did cover a little bit that there are some dance or performing arts integrated with technologies, but how these students can develop their AI literacy and learn to integrate AI effectively into their future work and enhance their advantage?
Yeah, this is a great question, because we do get a lot of students who ask about this, and I think the answer again here is take music, for example, right? Music has already become a very technological degree, and music and the software that comes into composing music, creating it, art as well. I mean, AI tools can now produce artwork which almost looks exactly like the real thing. Right? And there's a very interesting book about this, which talks about how the nature of art and artists is definitely going to change over the next 10, 15 years. This book's called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick, who's a professor of business at Wharton's, Penn's Wharton Business School. And ultimately, anyone who studies art is going to need to study a course that also has access to the technology behind some of these new image generation, same for things like design, anything like digital design for that matter as well. A lot of this will be automated, right? The human still has a role in this process, but again, you need to find the courses that integrate it together. History would be the same, right? You think about how technology in a history classroom can make it so incredible in the future.
So is there any recommend program or universities that provide these kind of resources for students to choose?
Absolutely. I mentioned Oregon State, right? So Oregon State's a really good one. And then another one would be Drew, for example, because Drew, by definition, is liberal arts. And so its interdisciplinary study is amazing. So like I said, with the student who was doing some CS and some humanities at the same time, that was an option for them there as well. So the options for those students who want to do humanities are twofold. One is they find a humanities course which already has that kind of technology woven in. The other is that they do an interdisciplinary major and explore science within it. So some of the most famous people in the world previously have done this. If you look at the founder of Dell Computers, you know, the worst computer company in the world. I love my Dell. Michael Dell. He studied biology, for example, right? Not so much to do with that. And then Carly Fiorina from HP, the previous CEO of HP, she studied philosophy and medical history. So actually, you don't necessarily need to be studying something entirely related, because you can do all these electives and these minors as well. But my real advice to humanities and art students is find that way to bring in the technology, right? And more universities are coming out with courses like that now. But this isn't something you can see by looking at the headline of a school.
So now we come to nearly the end of this interview. I really hate that, because I don't want to finish the conversation with you. However, I'm going to give you the last very challenging question, because actually a lot of Taiwanese families, they do want to choose US as their destination. However, they might have some concern because of a lot of changes on stability for reasons here, especially they worry about the unfriendly atmosphere toward international students or foreigners. What's your observation and what's your advice to them?
Let's reel this off real quick. This is the end, so if you're still paying attention, I salute you. The USA has 200,000 international students currently working on OPT. If you can tell me any other country that developed in the world that can offer 200,000 jobs to international students, I will eat my hat. Okay, that is an amazing opportunity for students to get involved there, right? And I know my hands are now looking a little bit like America's president right now when I'm doing this, but this is the other question I'm getting, right? Will he change it? I don't believe so. I don't believe OPT is going to change meaningfully. I think there are some countries in the world that will have difficulty with visas. Taiwan is not one of those regions. It's not going to be a problem for students. In fact, Donald Trump has surrounded himself with tech billionaires. Look at his inauguration. All of the tech CEOs were there. They are huge advocates for H-1Bs and OPT. And 71%, very specific number, but it's important, in Silicon Valley tech are non Americans. Okay, so we look at these companies. Microsoft, $3 trillion. Nvidia, 3.5 trillion. The irony is a lot of this is driven by international graduates. Okay, so don't worry about that. This is the best time to go to America. In January, 52,000 new technology jobs were added to the economy. There are now 500,000 unfilled positions in America. 500,000 with no one to take them. So there is still opportunity, and there will be for many years to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, guys. Charge on, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
那如果你需要更多的资讯的话，我们之后会再留在下方的说明栏。那有任何问题，欢迎都可以跟我们联系。今天谢谢大家 ，Thank you, Ben.
拜拜 Thank you.
Thank you.
如果需要个别咨询，请在影片下方加入官方 LINE ISC 国际学生中心免费协助你。喜欢我们的影片，记得按赞、追踪和分享，并且开启小铃铛。如果不想错过国外大学的最新消息，欢迎到影片的下方追踪我们的社群平台哟。请在下方加入官方 LINE， 请在影片下方加入官方 LINE。哎，等一下，那这样子，我们是站在这边录吗？我们的影片记得按赞、追踪。哎，等一下，太高，你不行，我就没有办法。